Let's talk about Taylor Jenkins. The Memphis Grizzlies, I think, surprised a lot of people by firing Taylor Jenkins with 9 games to go in the season over the weekend. Before giving my take, beyond just like I will say from the jump here, I was not wildly surprised when I saw this. I was a little bit surprised by the timing, but like I was not surprised that Taylor Jenkins is not going to be the coach of the Memphis Grizzlies anymore. What was your immediate reaction when you saw this?
I was shocked. I felt like Taylor Jenkins had a pretty good reputation, I guess. I will admit I don't like always follow this coaching stuff. I definitely don't have any sort of intel or anything like that in terms of the happiness of things. I guess my thing is I watch them play. I find their offense very exciting, very interesting. There are some questions I have. I feel like defensively, I came away like there was some intriguing things they did on the defensive end throughout games I watched this year. We talked about like individual shortcomings in that in terms of like who's your defensive stopper, but that's not really a coach thing, I don't think. So when you look at a team that is where they're at in terms of offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating, you just look at some of the stuff that I guess you often look at with coaches. I was surprised. And I know they're like the first year of kind of this new offense, pace, whatever stuff. It just seemed weird to me that it wasn't like it was a catastrophe, right? And so that's why it surprised me. Along with the biggest surprise, Sam, was the timing in terms of like, you didn't know 2, 3, 4. What happened over the last 4 weeks that made you solid in this decision where maybe you could have integrated the new coach a little bit more for a playoff push as opposed to doing it with 10 games left in the season and then trying to integrate that person?
Okay. So here's where I want to kind of go with this. I want to lay out what the Grizzlies have been basically since the start of February, right?
Yep.
They're 12-14 since the start of February. They have a 116 defensive rating, which is not good by their standards, right? And I get that Jaren Jackson has been out for a little bit of a piece of that, but like, that's not enough. You know what I mean? Like that's not enough for that. And he's played in like a not, insignificant number of those games, right? They do have a 117 offensive rating in those games. So like even in these games, they are a plus team. Here's the problem when you start to come down to it. Per Cleaning the Glass, this season, the Memphis Grizzlies are 6-15 against teams with a top 10 point differential in terms of net rating outside of garbage time. They have a negative 7.5 net rating in those games. That's just like nowhere near contender status. Against the bottom 10 teams, they are 22-5 with a plus 14 net rating. They are the third best in the league in those games. They are basically kicking the shit out of bad teams and not really contending against good teams. And that has become even more stark since February 1st. Since February 1st, Memphis is 0-8 against top 10 teams with a negative 13.2 net rating in that time. They lost by 7 in Isalo's debut against the Lakers. They lost by 21 to OKC, 20 to the Clippers. They lost to the Cavs by 9, lost to the Thunder by 17, lost to the Knicks by 1, lost to the Cavs by 6, lost to the Pacers by 14, Clippers by 14, Thunder by 13. The last time they beaten a playoff team was Milwaukee on February 2nd, but they are not a top 10 differential team. They beat Houston on January 30th. So that's like the real time they beat a top 10 team. But even in the game before that, they lost to the Knicks by 37. And then also within that window, they lost to the Blazers by 16, a team that is playing like fairly well right now. Maybe not quite top 10 quality, but like a real team that is playing with real like positive energy and making things hard on everybody else. So all of this says to me that this team is just not competing. And if you watch them against good teams, it does not feel like they have much of a shot. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if it's like it could be a scheme thing on some level, like in a real level, my issue with them right now offensively is that everything in basketball is about creating advantages, right? You have to get the initial advantage.
Sure.
Their offense critically is so much about getting the initial advantage, right? And then being able to attack off of the advantage. When John Moran is out of the lineup, they don't have an advantage creator, but they also aren't really running a scheme that creates those advantages oftentimes, right? So like Desmond Bane, God love him, like he's a great finisher, like a play finisher who keeps your advantages by either finishing and scoring or shooting or by passing. Like he's a sharp passer who makes good decisions. You know, Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, has gotten to the point this year where he can create advantages, but he's not one of the better guys in the league at it necessarily. He's just a really high level mismatch player at times. I don't think that they have enough dudes really to go out and create advantages, but also the scheme is not creating advantages either. And this is where we talk about, like, obviously they fired Noah LaRoche, Patrick St. Thomas, I believe as well, the two other assistants. LaRoche is the guy that like has really been responsible for a lot of the offense. Some of the scheme and like the spacing stuff is Tuamasi Salo, who has been elevated to the head coach.
Okay, so that's where my confusion was, because the guy they promoted, and I'm not going to try to say names because I know that I'm not prevalent on assistant coaches, but I knew enough to know an assistant coach had brought over this half court spacing thing, but then everybody said the assistant coach that went with Taylor out the door was the guy that was supposed to be so that I have some confusion on who's credited
the spacing like principles. Okay. From what I understand, a lot of them are Isalos, and like there are pieces of that in there. But for the most part, LaRoche was the guy that like really was in charge of the offense. Okay. And was like running the offensive scheme and like flow and everything. Right. My impression is that it just did not work out with LaRoche. And oh, by the way, like, you know, there's been reporting about this now that like part of the reason they don't really run ball screens, they run ball screens at the least, they run ball screens less often than anybody else in the league right now, was that was LaRoche's offense. So if you actually go back and you watch Paris last year, they ran a shit ton of ball screens with like TJ Shorts and Nadir Heafy. That like a piece of the Isalo offense is like ball screens. And then you like space around and you kind of make it work that way, right? The LaRoche thing was like, we're not going to run ball screens. And that just like did not in any way, shape or form work. And that's what I've kind of gathered from talking to people around the league. Right. So where I sit on this is my guess is that we see, especially once Ja comes back, like fully, we see a lot more ball screens and we see where this goes.
So this was my one, not as intricate as like you explaining it there, but one of my biggest questions throughout the last part of the season, throughout the whole season going into the playoffs. It wasn't just, you know, we talked about all the time, who's going to take the primary defensive matchups. It was, what is the hierarchy of this team on the offensive end? And what is your ceiling? If you talk about Jaren Jackson Jr., like we have loved Jaren Jackson Jr. up all season long, right? We've been so impressed with him, but you just brought, like, he has some shortcomings in terms of doing that or some limitations. Desmond Bane, same thing. To me, this is Ja Morant is the guy, and you need to run an offense that puts the ball in his hands consistently in the ways that's going to allow him to break down the defense. My pushback on that is, Sam, Ja has been unavailable for various reasons the last couple of seasons and has only played 44 games this season. Can I completely destroy what we'll call an offensive coordinator for building an offense that may try to find success without a single guy that can do that when the one guy that can isn't always available to me and my team for whatever reason? Yeah. I'm not trying to take shots at Ja. I'm not even trying to support the coaching staff and their decisions. I'm trying to understand. And whenever I hear like certain things, that's where my mind would go, just playing devil's advocate of, can you blame them for maybe looking for another avenue or another path other than 20 Ja pick and rolls? He's the guy. Cause then what do we do when he's not there? So like, I wonder if that was part of their calculation when they decided they were going to go down this road.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. You can combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, with college basketball players, with whoever you want to pick to go over or under their points, their goal total, their RBI total for the day. Whatever you want to do, you can do it at Prize Picks. We love Prize Picks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. The second half of the basketball season is here. The NBA playoffs are just weeks away, and it's really, really exciting because it gives you ample opportunity to sit down and to get some real money action on the games. If you think LeBron is going to go crazy here as the Lakers try to get rolling here into the playoff push, if you think Giannis is going to have to go bonkers now with Damian Lillard out of the lineup in order to get the Bucks over the line, you can cook up the hot takes with your friends and you can win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Look, we love Prize Picks here. Really important sponsor for us. We adore them. Please go sign up and download that app today. Use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly when you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. The more I've thought about it, and I thought that when they decided to change their coaching staff around Taylor Jenkins last year, I thought that it might work, right? Like I thought, okay, like I'm willing to see this out and see what happens. But I think the reason that they did that is that they know that Taylor Jenkins is a good coach. It has nothing to do with Taylor Jenkins not being a good coach. Sometimes you just need a change.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the reality. Like if you're not going to change the players, which, you have Jaren Jackson, John Morant, who is, trade value is probably not as high as what it could be at some point. So you want to try and rehabilitate that before you move him. If you're even going to consider moving him, which I'm not convinced that they're going to do. And Desmond Bane, who's on like a completely reasonable deal, you probably need to change the offense or you need to change the coaches in some way. At the time, I thought this could work. Looking back on it with, full understanding of everything, I think it was probably a bad decision to just not get rid of Taylor last summer. I think that if you're going to change the entire staff around him and put in, like, frankly, a guy who is one of the best coaches in Europe, and then this other guy, Noah LaRoche, who is, this offensive, guy, and then you're going to put in, all of these other guys on the staff too. Like you have Anthony Carter there, and you have Saint, and you have like all these other dudes, right? Like, I think that it probably just would have made more sense to move on. And I think that I was wrong last summer in thinking that it could work. I'll take the L on that, like, is me thinking, but like my lesson that I'm taking from this is that if you're thinking about removing all of the assistance around a guy and you're creating a new comfort, like an entirely new, situation for him, you probably just have to get rid of the guy at the end of the day.
I agree with that. And listen, I've never came close to coaching at that level. But one thing I learned through coaching in college a little bit, and then again at a very different level, but like you have to have that chemistry with yours. I've seen poor assistant coach chemistry / staff chemistry completely tank a season and make it miserable for everybody.
Yeah.
And I've seen it completely uplift a team when everybody kind of has their role and knows it and does well. And as a head coach, I would always be feeling that I wasn't at my fullest as a head coach if I didn't have the assistants that I don't know, was most comfortable with. Comfort's a hard, I don't mean, because sometimes it's good to be out of your comfort zone, but I would struggle coaching with assistants that like I didn't pick, even if it could end up being a good thing. So I think I agree with you, I guess is my point, that if you're going to force, and I don't know that this assistant coaching staff was forced on Taylor Jenkins. Like, I don't know the ins and outs enough of that, but if it was like, hey, you have to get an all new assistant staff, whatever, it probably would have been better to just bring in a new head coach that was completely fully on board with all of the directions they were going to go.
So, and given all of this now, I don't have a problem with them firing Taylor Jenkins right now. Because here's the thing. They had a 0% chance to win the title this year based off of how they've played, based off of the way things were going. They had no shot. We just talked. They've lost their last 8 games against top 10 teams with a negative 13 net rating in those games. I think we feel pretty good that they just had no chance to win it this year. And if you knew, and I'm not saying, I mean, obviously, I guess I will say it, given that they fired the guy, but if you knew that you weren't bringing back Taylor Jenkins anyway, I don't really have a problem with them firing him now and seeing what you have with Tuomas Salo and like the other guys on this staff and seeing where that goes. Because look, any coach that comes from Europe to the NBA will tell you it's a totally different deal, right? The way shoot-arounds are run, the way that you have to deal with players, the way that you have to deal with everything that goes into all of this, right? It's an entirely different beast. Seeing how he manages players, seeing how he is in the top spot is new information. Also, and this is small sample, I get it, but like the Ja, Dez, and Jaren core has just never had a coach that is different than Taylor Jenkins since they've been good, right? So you need to understand how they look under a new coach on some level. And look, you're going to get somewhere between 13 and 17 games probably. Maybe you get a few more. Who knows? But I want to know, like, I would want that information. I don't have a problem with Zach Kleiman doing this. And by the way, you know, Zach said in his press conference, which was 2 minutes and 40 seconds, which was hysterical. I loved it, kind of. Yeah. He was just like, this was my decision and mine alone. He said it multiple times. And I think that is important to know here at the very least.
The other thing I'll say is, I always say this about coaching decisions in particular. There's so much data we don't have. I said this when the Pistons coaching search was going on 2 different years. I was like, guys, we don't know. We don't know why JB did a certain thing with his team. Like, you have to look at the roster. But more importantly, so much of coaching goes on in locker rooms, on the bench where you don't hear what is said, in meetings, you know, taking care of players, having those relationships, all of that. And so I try not to judge any of these decisions too harsh, because Zach Kleiman knows a billion times more about Taylor Jenkins and what they've tried and what the understanding was and how the players are reacting to it and all of those things. I'm just trying to give some other perspectives to it. I will push. I want to throw this at you, Sam, in terms of the timing.
Yeah.
Here's my problem with the timing. 17 games is a small enough sample to still be a honeymoon stage. And I've witnessed an organization in a different league, the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, hire an interim head coach based off the honeymoon stage of the last 3 seasons.
Ohio State just did it last year with John Diebler or Jake Diebler. I'm sorry. And it looks like it's the wrong hire. We'll go with.
So my thing is, if you do this a month ago, and maybe there was information Kleiman still needed to get to feel 100% about letting Jenkins go, I think if you do it a month ago, the sample size is big enough that you get through the honeymoon stage. You get through the stage of, hey, they're doing different things, playing different lineups. They went from 30th in the NBA in ball screens to 12th. We weren't ready for that. And then you get the 10, 15 games of substance where everybody's kind of figured things out in terms of, okay, this is who they are. Almost every player is going to adjust positively to the new coach for a little bit, right? Like, lots of times that's going to happen. It's something new. You kind of like, okay, I'm in, until you aren't in anymore. That would be my pushback, is this isn't long enough to get out of the honeymoon stage and get the information I would want if I was trying to make a decision on the interim head coach versus bringing in somebody from the outside.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with any of that, but I don't think it's unfair to like get a feel for how he deals with players more than anything.
And that's where it's more on the inside, right? Like Kleiman is going to be able to evaluate him on a daily basis in terms of it is long enough to see if Ja enjoys playing for him and likes the new system and that type of. And at the end of the day, it matters what Ja thinks, because I think he's the most important player within the organization to make them title contenders. And does Bane like it? How do the rookies play?
The big one here is Jaren, because Jaren has a contract decision.
That is a great point in terms of the contract situation with Jaren. He is the most important in terms of keeping happy because of that situation specifically. That is true.
And to be clear, like from everything I know about Jaren Jackson, he is like the lowest maintenance dude that you will find. And like, there's no worries about like him feeling, concerned, like, oh my God, like it's going to be a disaster. He's going to be so picky about this stuff. Like, I don't get that impression at all, but I do think it's important for him to have a feel before he signs a long-term deal. Right. And he'll have opinions on it. Certainly. Last thing I do just want to note here, right? Maybe two more things. This doesn't have to be anybody's fault.
Sure.
Like, it's not like this team's been very successful outside of last season's like injury spilled disaster, right? Like injury, mess. This team's been very competitive for a while, and Taylor Jenkins was a huge part of that. And he was a huge part of their development of these young guys over the years. And they now have like this awesome core of young players around Ja and Dez and, Jaren that are entering their prime. Like it's not his fault that it was time, right? Sometimes it's just time to get a different voice in there, to get like a different, feel. The odds are, frankly, the coach that you hire is probably not going to be as good as Taylor Jenkins, because Taylor Jenkins is quite good. But sometimes just getting a different voice is helpful. Like I've felt that way about the Penguins for a while now in Pittsburgh, right? Like Mike Sullivan has brought them like Stanley Cup playoff success in Stanley Cups, and it just feels stale anytime I watch a Penguins game, frankly. And like they have bigger problems in terms of the salary cap and everything, but like it just feels like a different voice would be valuable for them in some way, shape, or form. It's the same in Memphis to me.
We've seen it play out consistently. I mean, again, I know people probably get annoyed me going to an NFL thing, but Andy Reid gets fired by the Eagles because it had gotten stale. He goes to Kansas City. He wins multiple championships in Kansas City. But you know what else happened? The Eagles have won 2 championships since Andy Reid left. We're seeing it play out right now, not at the same championship level. JB Bickerstaff gets fired from Cleveland, and I'm not, for whatever reason, Kenny Atkinson comes in, has made that team better, while also JB has gone to a different place and is doing maybe an even better job than what Kenny Atkinson is doing in Cleveland. Like again, to your point, this doesn't mean Taylor Jenkins is a bad coach. It doesn't mean Zach Kleiman made a bad decision if Taylor Jenkins goes somewhere and does a really good job. And it also doesn't mean they may not bring in a head coach that is just like the right fit. Like it can just be a wrong. This is sports, Sam. And it's not robotic. I'm not like trying to like make a war on the numbers. Like that's not me at all. I love analytics and I'm glad it's a part of what we do now, but we do sometimes forget the human side of things, and that sometimes this can happen and it's okay. And to your point, it's not always somebody's fault, and it doesn't mean somebody sucks or did their job bad or something like that. Sometimes it's just time. Yeah.
I agree. The second piece of this is like, I've seen people like speculate about like Zach Kleiman or whatever. They're like Zach Kleiman feels very secure there to me. And he's done a great job. Like you look at the way he's evaluated players and you look at the way he's brought in talent, absolutely should be secure there, in my opinion. Truly, like if an organization, like if the Grizzlies got rid of Zach Kleiman, he would be snapped up in
a heartbeat,
10 seconds by some team. Like it would take such a limited amount of time that it would like make people's heads spin.
Yes.
He is so well regarded around the league as like being not like somebody that people enjoy dealing with, but also just really, really sharp. So I don't see anything remotely close there that Kleiman would be in any way on the hot seat. That just feels so premature to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like now maybe he gets the hire wrong again and something like, yes, everything else would be just like looking at things in the future that isn't worth talking about right now. I'm with you 100%. And I agree that if they did decide to move on for whatever reason, there would be organizations opening their doors wide open to bring him in and let him start making decisions for their team.
Yeah, I think that's dead on.